The boy who got fired for lacking imagination. A newspaper editor once looked at a young man's drawings and told him he had no talent, no creativity, no future in this business. That young man grew up to build an empire made entirely of imagination. His name was Walt Disney. And this is not just a story about cartoons. It's a story about what happens when the whole world tells you no, and you keep drawing anyway. Today, we're going to slow down and walk through his life step by step. And while we do that, I'm going to teach you some useful English words along the way. Simple words, the kind you can use tomorrow in a real conversation. So, get comfortable. Let's begin. Walt was born in 1901 in Chicago, Illinois, in the United States. His family didn't have much money. His father, Elias, moved the family from place to place, chasing one failed business after another. A farm, a newspaper route, a jelly factory. Nothing quite worked. Young Walt grew up doing hard early mornings, delivering newspapers before school in freezing weather for years without pay because his father believed children should work, not be paid. Here's a good word for you: hardship. It means a difficult or painful situation, something that costs you comfort or ease. Walt's childhood was full of hardship. But even inside all that hardship, there was one thing that made him feel alive: drawing. He drew on any surface he could find: fences, paper bags, the margins of his school books. His teachers weren't impressed. They wanted him focused on math and grammar, not doodles of animals and funny little men. At 16, with the First World War happening in Europe, Walt wanted to join the army, but he was too young. So he did something clever. He changed the date on his birth certificate to make himself look older, and he joined the Red Cross instead, driving ambulances in France. Even there, in the middle of a war, he covered his ambulance in cartoon drawings instead of the standard military camouflage. That tells you something about who Walt Disney already was as a teenager. Let's pause for a word here: persistence. It means continuing to do something even when it's difficult, even when nobody is asking you to. Walt had persistence about drawing long before anyone paid him for it, long before anyone believed in it. When he came home from the war, Walt got a job at a small art studio in Kansas City, making advertisements. It was there that he met a young artist named Ubi Iwerks, who would become his creative partner for years. Together, they started experimenting with something new at the time: animation, moving drawings, cartoons that could tell a story frame by frame. Walt started his own little animation company, calling it Laugh-O-Gram Films. And this is where the first real disaster of his career happened. The company failed. Completely. Walt couldn't pay his employees. He couldn't pay his rent. He was so poor at one point that he slept in his office and ate cold beans out of a can, sometimes just one meal every few days. He even had to sell his camera to buy a train ticket out of Kansas City. At 21 years old, Walt Disney was, by every normal measure, a failure. Here's a word worth learning: bankrupt. It means having no money left at all, financially ruined, unable to pay what you owe. Walt's first company went bankrupt. Most people at that point would have given up on the whole idea of animation and gone looking for a safe, steady job instead. Walt didn't. With almost nothing left, he packed a cardboard suitcase and took a train to Hollywood, California, where his older brother Roy already lived. Walt had exactly $40 in his pocket and one finished cartoon reel. That's it. That was the entire foundation of what would one day become one of the biggest entertainment companies on the planet. Let's take a word here: determination. It's that fire inside a person that makes them keep moving toward a goal even when the goal seems far away or impossible. Walt and his brother Roy started a new studio together, Disney Brothers Studio, in the back of a small office in Los Angeles. They made short cartoons about a character named Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, and for a while, it actually worked. Oswald became popular. Walt finally had some money coming in. Then came the second disaster, and this one was almost worse than the first. Walt traveled to New York to renegotiate his contract with the distributor who owned the rights to Oswald. During that meeting, he discovered something devastating. The distributor legally owned the character, not Walt. And to make it worse, that same distributor had secretly hired away almost every animator working for Walt, one by one, behind his back. Walt left that meeting having lost his most successful character and most of his team, all at once. Here's a useful word: betrayal. It means being hurt by someone you trusted, having their loyalty broken. Walt felt that betrayal deeply. On the train ride home to California, heartbroken but not defeated, he started sketching a new character in his notebook. A mouse, cheerful, a little mischievous, full of energy. At first, he wanted to call this mouse Mortimer. His wife Lillian thought that name sounded too formal, too stiff. She suggested something friendlier instead: Mickey. Mickey Mouse premiered in 1928 in a short film called Steamboat Willie, and it was groundbreaking for one specific reason. It was one of the first cartoons ever made with fully synchronized sound. Audiences had never heard anything like it. A cartoon character that moved perfectly in time with music and sound effects. It was an instant sensation. Let's learn a word from this moment: breakthrough. It means a sudden, important success after a long period of difficulty or struggle. Mickey Mouse was Walt's breakthrough, but here's something important. It came right after his lowest, most painful failure. The betrayal that could have ended his career instead pushed him toward the idea that made him famous. You'd think after that, everything became easy for Walt Disney. It didn't. In the 1930s, he decided to do something that people in the film industry thought was completely insane: make a full-length feature film cartoon, something that had never been done before in the history of cinema. Everyone told him it was impossible. Short cartoons were fine for a few minutes of entertainment before a movie, but nobody would sit through 90 minutes of drawings. People in Hollywood started calling this unfinished project Disney's folly. Here's a word for that: folly. It means a foolish or reckless idea, something people believe is a mistake before it's even finished. Walt mortgaged his own house to help pay for this film. He pushed his studio into serious debt. He worked his animators through exhausting hours, refining every single frame, because he believed audiences would cry, laugh, and feel real emotion watching drawn characters if the work was good enough. The film was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, released in 1937. It was not a folly. It became one of the most successful films of its era, praised by critics and loved by audiences of every age. Walt didn't just prove his doubters wrong. He created an entirely new form of entertainment that didn't exist before he insisted on it. Let's take a word from this: vision. It means the ability to imagine what something could become even before it exists, even before anyone else can see it. Walt Disney had vision when almost everyone around him only had doubt. From there, his studio grew. Pinocchio, Fantasia, Dumbo, Bambi, each one took enormous financial risk, and not everyone succeeded right away. Some, like Fantasia, actually lost money when they were first released and only became beloved classics years later. Walt kept building anyway, kept taking risks that his own accountants sometimes begged him not to take. Then in the 1950s, Walt had another idea that people around him thought was reckless. He wanted to build an amusement park, not the noisy, slightly run-down kind that already existed at the time. He wanted something completely clean, completely immersive, a place where the details never broke the illusion, where every fence, every uniform, every trash can was designed on purpose. Bankers refused to fund it at first. It seemed like an enormous financial gamble for a business that had nothing to do with making movies. Here's a word worth knowing: gamble. It means taking a risk on something uncertain, where you might win big or lose everything. Walt gambled on Disneyland anyway, even selling his own life insurance policy at one point to help cover costs, and even hosting a television show partly just to raise money and public interest for the park. Disneyland opened in 1955 in Anaheim, California. Opening day itself was actually a mess. Extreme heat, counterfeit tickets that let in far too many guests, and rides that broke down. Reporters at the time nicknamed it Black Sunday. But Walt refined it, fixed it, and within just a couple of months, Disneyland became one of the most visited destinations in the country. Let's take one more word here. Perfectionist. It means someone who refuses to accept good enough. Someone who keeps adjusting and improving until something matches the picture in their mind. Walt was famously a perfectionist. He would walk through Disneyland himself, noticing tiny details most visitors would never consciously see. A chipped paint spot, a light bulb slightly too dim, and he would insist it be fixed immediately. By the time Walt Disney died in 1966, he had built something almost impossible to summarize in a few sentences. An animation studio that changed how stories could be told, characters recognized on every continent on Earth, a theme park that redefined what public entertainment could be, and a company that would go on to shape childhoods for generations long after he was gone. So let's step back and look at Walt Disney's full story from beginning to end. A boy from a poor family, working unpaid before dawn. A teenager who lied about his age just to help in a war. A young man who went bankrupt and ate cold beans alone in his office. A man who was betrayed and lost his most popular character overnight. A man told his biggest idea was folly. And finally, someone who reshaped entertainment itself, not once, but again and again, across decades. None of this happened by luck. It happened because a poor kid kept drawing on fences when nobody was paying him to, because a young man got up from bankruptcy with $40 and one film reel instead of quitting, because a betrayed animator turned his heartbreak into a mouse named Mickey instead of walking away from animation forever, because a studio head mortgaged his own house for an idea everyone else called impossible. Here's what I want you to carry with you from this story, along with the English words we practiced today. Words like hardship, persistence, bankrupt, betrayal, breakthrough, folly, vision, gamble, and perfectionist aren't just vocabulary for a test. They describe real choices made by a real person in real moments of difficulty. You may not be building a company or a theme park, but maybe you're learning a new language right now, one word at a time, even when it feels slow. Maybe you're facing your own version of that editor's voice, telling you that you lack the talent or the imagination for something you love. Walt Disney's life is proof that a no spoken by someone else does not have to become your own truth. If this story moved you, subscribe to this channel for more stories like this one, where we learn English through real lives, real struggles, and real victories. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.